The Galactic Council chambers stretched endlessly in all directions, a testament to the technological prowess of the Vorthak Empire. Representatives from dozens of species sat in their designated pods, each one designed to accommodate their unique biological requirements. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime to convert thousands of different languages into comprehensible communication. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stood at the center podium, her small human frame dwarfed by the massive alien delegates surrounding her. Her dark hair was pulled back in a professional bun, and her crisp blue diplomatic uniform bore the emblem of the United Earth Federation. Despite her composed exterior, her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the speech tablet. "Honored delegates," Elena began, her voice carrying across the vast chamber through the amplification system. "I come before you today to request immediate intervention in the ongoing conflict between Earth and the Zephyrian Dominion." A ripple of what could only be described as amusement passed through the assembly. The sound was alien yet unmistakable, the galactic equivalent of barely suppressed laughter. Elena's jaw tightened, but she continued. "For 3 months, Zephyrian warships have blockaded our solar system. They have destroyed 17 of our deep space mining stations and killed over 4,000 innocent civilians. We ask for justice under the Galactic Peace Accords." High Counselor Vexthal, a towering mantis-like creature with iridescent green carapace, leaned forward in his pod. His compound eyes glittered with what Elena had learned to recognize as condescension. "Ambassador Rodriguez," his voice clicked and chittered through the translator. "Are you suggesting that the mighty Zephyrian Dominion has engaged in unprovoked aggression against your quaint little world?" "That is exactly what I'm saying," Elena replied firmly. They attacked without warning, without cause, and without mercy. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien sounds, clicks, whistles, growls, and harmonics that the translation system couldn't quite categorize. Elena realized with growing horror that they were laughing at her. Counselor Zephaniah, a crystalline being whose body refracted light into prismatic rainbows, chimed melodically. "Dear human, you speak of Zephyrian aggression as if it were some great cosmic crime. But tell us, what could your species possibly have done to anger such a powerful civilization?" Elena's composure cracked slightly. "We did nothing. We were exploring a system we believed to be uninhabited when their fleet appeared and opened fire, without any attempt at communication." "Without communication?" High Counselor Vexthal's antennae twitched in apparent amusement. "How very unlike the Zephyrians. They are known for their diplomatic protocols. Perhaps there was a misunderstanding." "There was no misunderstanding," Elena said, her voice rising despite her training. "They murdered our people in cold blood." The laughter grew louder. Counselor Morpheus, a gaseous entity contained within a mechanical shell, spoke with a voice like wind through metal. "Such dramatic language, little human. Murdered in cold blood. You speak as if your emotions matter in the grand scheme of galactic politics." Elena felt heat rising in her cheeks. "Our emotions? You think this is about emotions? This is about justice. This is about right and wrong. Right and wrong." Counselor Zephaniah's crystal form pulsed with brighter light. "How beautifully primitive. You humans and your binary thinking. Your anger clouds your judgment, Ambassador. Perhaps that is why you find yourselves in this predicament." "My anger?" Elena's voice cracked like a whip. "You're damn right I'm angry. Wouldn't you be angry if someone slaughtered your people for sport?" The chamber fell into a momentary silence before exploding into even louder alien laughter. High Counselor Vexthal wiped his compound eyes with a delicate appendage. "Oh, Ambassador Rodriguez, you have just proven our point perfectly. This display of human rage is precisely why your species will never be taken seriously in galactic affairs." Elena's hands clenched into fists at her sides. "What are you talking about?" "Your anger, dear human," Counselor Morpheus wheezed through his mechanical voice box. "It is so intense, so consuming, so wonderfully entertaining. We have studied your species extensively, and your capacity for fury is quite remarkable for such a small and weak civilization. The Zephyrians chose your system precisely because of this trait," Counselor Zephaniah added, her crystalline voice tinkling like broken glass. "They wanted to see how your species would react under pressure. Your anger is like a drug to them, intoxicating and addictive." Elena stared in disbelief. "You're saying they attacked us as an experiment? To make us angry?" "Not just angry," High Counselor Vexthal corrected with obvious delight. Furiously, helplessly, spectacularly angry. And you have not disappointed. The recordings of human rage broadcasts have become quite popular entertainment across several systems. Entertainment? Elena's voice was barely above a whisper, but the word carried across the silent chamber like thunder. Oh yes, Counselor Morpheus confirmed. Your species' emotional responses are so raw, so unfiltered. Most civilized races learned to control such base impulses eons ago. Watching humans succumb to anger is like observing primitive beasts in their natural habitat. Elena closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, her expression had changed from desperate pleading to something far more dangerous. So you find our anger entertaining? Immensely, High Counselor Vexthul admitted. It is refreshing to see such unbridled emotion in the galaxy. Most species have evolved beyond such crude displays. And you believe this anger makes us weak? Demonstrably so, Counselor Zephaniah chimed. Look at you now, Ambassador. You stand before the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and what do? You let your emotions control you. You shout and threaten and wave your little fist like an infant having a tantrum. Elena nodded slowly. I see. And the Galactic Council's position on the Zephyrian blockade? We see no reason to intervene, High Counselor Vexthul declared. The Zephyrians are conducting legitimate research into xenopsychology. Your species is simply the subject of that research. Research that involves murdering our civilians. Collateral damage in the pursuit of knowledge, Counselor Morpheus dismissed. Surely even your primitive species can understand the greater good. Elena looked around the chamber at the dozens of alien faces staring down at her with amusement and contempt. She thought of the 4,000 dead humans, floating in the cold vacuum of space. She thought of the families who would never see their loved ones again. She thought of the children who had been vaporized simply because their anger was entertaining to cosmic bullies. You know what? Elena said quietly, her voice carrying a new quality that made several of the closer delegates shift uncomfortably in their pods. You're absolutely right about human anger. We do get angry. We get very, very angry. Yes, we know, High Counselor Vexthul said, missing the subtle change in her tone. That is what makes you so amusing. Elena smiled, and for the first time since entering the chamber, the alien stopped laughing. Then let me share something with you about human anger that your research might have missed. She turned slowly, making eye contact with as many delegates as possible. We don't just get angry and shout and wave our fists like children. When we get truly angry, when you murder our people for your entertainment, we do something else entirely. And what is that, little human? Counselor Zephaniah asked, though her crystalline form had dimmed noticeably. Elena's smile widened, but it never reached her eyes. We get even. 3 days after Elena Rodriguez's ominous warning to the Galactic Council, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the Situation Room deep beneath the mountains of Colorado. The United Earth Federation's military command center buzzed with activity as officers hurried between holographic displays showing real-time data from across human space. Status report, Admiral Chen commanded as she approached the central tactical display. Her silver hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her weathered face bore the scars of someone who had seen combat in the early days of human space exploration. Colonel Marcus Webb, a tall man with prematurely gray hair, gestured toward the three-dimensional star map floating before them. The Zephyrian blockade has tightened around Sol system. They've moved 12 additional warships into position around our outer colonies. Intelligence suggests they're preparing for the next phase of their experiment, which is complete orbital bombardment of Mars Colony Beta, Webb replied grimly. Population, 2 million civilians. Admiral Chen's jaw tightened. Time frame, 72 hours based on their movement patterns. Around the room, other officers continued their work, but Admiral Chen could feel the weight of their attention. Everyone knew what this moment meant. For the first time in human history, they faced a threat that conventional diplomacy couldn't solve. Admiral, came a voice from across the room. Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne, the Federation's chief xenobiologist, approached, carrying a tablet filled with data. I've completed my analysis of the Galactic Council session recordings. What did you find, Doctor? Hawthorne's expression was grim. They weren't lying about the entertainment value. Zephyrian networks have been broadcasting edited footage of our people's final moments to over 40 star systems. They're calling it primitive emotion theater. The room fell silent except for the hum of computers and the distant rumble of the mountain's life support systems. Admiral Chen closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of command settling on her shoulders like a lead blanket. "How many species are watching?" she asked quietly. "Approximately 37 civilizations representing over 2 trillion sentient beings." Admiral Chen opened her eyes and looked around the room at her officers. These were good people, scientists, explorers, defenders. They had joined the D.A.T. Federation to explore the stars and make contact with other intelligent life. None of them had ever imagined they would be here, planning humanity's response to cosmic bullies who murdered for entertainment. "Recommendations?" Admiral Chen asked. Colonel Webb stepped forward. "Conventional military response isn't viable. The Zephyrian Dominion has over 800 warships, each one capable of destroying our entire fleet single-handedly. Their technology is approximately 400 years ahead of ours." "Dr. Hawthorne?" The xenobiologist shook her head. "Diplomatic solutions are exhausted. The Galactic Council has made their position clear. We're considered lab rats, not equals." Admiral Chen nodded slowly. "Then we implement Protocol 7. The room went completely silent. Every officer froze in place, their faces reflecting a mixture of shock, fear, and something that might have been relief. "Admiral," Colonel Webb said carefully, "Protocol 7 has never been tested in actual combat conditions. The simulations showed a 94% probability of success, but the collateral damage estimates—" "I'm aware of the projections, Colonel." Admiral Chen's voice cut through his objections like a blade. "But we're not talking about collateral damage anymore. We're talking about survival." She turned to address the entire room. "Everyone here knows what Protocol 7 represents. It's the last resort option that our predecessors hoped we would never need to use. But they created it because they understood something that the rest of the galaxy apparently doesn't." Admiral Chen moved to the central display and manipulated the controls, bringing up a detailed schematic of something that looked like a cross between a spacecraft and a weapon of mass destruction. "Humans don't just get angry," she continued. "We get creative when we're angry. And we have been very, very creative for the past 200 years. Dr. Hawthorne stared at the schematic with a mixture of fascination and horror. "Project Prometheus. I thought it was just theoretical research. It was until 3 days ago." Admiral Chen's fingers danced across the control panel, revealing layer after layer of technical specifications. When the Zephyrians chose to make our anger their entertainment, they made a fundamental error in judgment. The schematic showed a sleek vessel roughly twice the size of humanity's largest battleship, but its design was unlike anything in the Federation fleet. Where human ships were built for exploration and defense, this craft had only one purpose: complete and total destruction. "They assumed our anger would make us reckless," Admiral Chen explained. "They thought we would charge headlong into their superior forces and provide them with an entertaining show of human futility. What they didn't consider is that human anger doesn't just burn hot, it burns smart." Colonel Webb leaned forward to study the technical readouts. "The power source, that's not fusion." "No," Admiral Chen confirmed. "It's not. Dr. Hawthorne, would you care to explain what we've been working on in the deep research facilities?" The xenobiologist's face was pale as she spoke. "For the past 50 years, our scientists have been reverse engineering technology from every piece of alien debris we could find. Crashed ships, abandoned space stations, discarded equipment. We've been building a comprehensive database of galactic technology." She manipulated the display to show internal schematics of the weapon systems. "But we didn't just copy what we found, we improved it. We took the best technology from dozens of different civilizations and combined it in ways that no one else has ever attempted. The result," Admiral Chen continued, "is a ship that doesn't just match galactic technology, it exceeds it, by approximately 150 years. The room erupted in whispered conversations as officers began to understand the implications. Humanity had been playing the long game while the galaxy laughed at their emotional displays. "How many?" Colonel Webb asked quietly. 17 ships, Admiral Chen replied. "Each one capable of eliminating an entire Zephyrian battle fleet. 17 ships against 800? Admiral Chen's smile was cold as winter on Pluto. Colonel, you're still thinking conventionally. These aren't ships in any sense that the Zephyrians would understand. They're weapons of total war, designed by a species that has been preparing for this exact scenario since the day we first looked up at the stars. She turned to face the entire room. Every one of you volunteered for this service knowing that someday we might encounter hostile aliens. What none of us expected was that we would encounter aliens who considered our pain entertaining. But that's exactly what we're dealing with. Dr. Hawthorne pulled up another section of the schematic. The psychological warfare components are particularly comprehensive. Explain. The ships are equipped with quantum communication arrays that can broadcast on every frequency used by the Galactic Council. When we engage the Zephyrians, every civilization that's been watching our primitive emotion theater will have front-row seats to humanity's response. Admiral Chen nodded. They wanted to see human anger. They wanted entertainment. They're going to get exactly what they asked for. Colonel Webb studied the deployment schedules. Estimated time to target? 48 hours to the first Zephyrian position, 24 hours before their planned bombardment of Mars Colony Beta. And after we engage? Admiral Chen looked around the room one final time. These people had served with honor and distinction in humanity's peaceful expansion into space. After today, everything would change. After we engage, she said quietly, the galaxy is going to learn something new about human anger. They're going to learn that when you push us too far, when you murder our people for sport, when you treat us like animals in a zoo. She paused, her eyes reflecting the cold fury that had been building in humanity for 3 months. When you do that, you don't get to laugh anymore. You get to burn. Captain David Park sat in the command chair of the UES Retribution, watching his crew make final preparations for humanity's first strike back against the Zephyrian Dominion. The bridge was smaller than those found on traditional Federation vessels, but every surface was covered with displays and controls that represented the most advanced technology Earth had ever produced. Final systems check complete, reported Lieutenant Commander Lisa Santos from the tactical station. Her fingers moved across holographic controls with practiced precision. All weapon systems are green. Stealth field generators are operating at maximum efficiency. Navigation confirms approach vector to Zephyrian Fleet Group Alpha, added Commander James Wright from the pilot station. We'll drop out of hyperspace in their sensor shadow at exactly 800 hours. Captain Park nodded, his calm exterior masking the storm of emotions beneath. Like every member of Retribution's crew, he had volunteered for this mission knowing it was likely a one-way trip. Unlike the Zephyrians and their Galactic Council allies, humans understood that some things were worth dying for. Communications. What's our status with the other Prometheus vessels? All 16 ships report ready, Captain, replied Ensign Maria Rodriguez, Ambassador Elena's younger sister who had specifically requested assignment to this mission. Admiral Chen confirms we are authorized to proceed with Operation Righteous Fury. The name had been chosen carefully. After 3 months of being treated as entertainment, humanity wanted the galaxy to understand exactly what they were about to witness. This wasn't just military action, it was judgment. Sir, Lieutenant Commander Santos called out, her voice tight with concentration. Long-range sensors are detecting the Zephyrian formation. 12 heavy cruisers in standard patrol configuration around Mars Colony Beta. They're maintaining position at optimal bombardment range. Captain Park stood and moved to the central tactical display. The holographic representation showed the Zephyrian ships arranged in a perfect sphere around the human colony world. Each vessel was roughly 3 times the size of Earth's largest battleship, bristling with weapon systems that could reduce a planet's surface to molten slag in a matter of hours. 2 million civilians down there, he said quietly. Men, women, children who never did anything except try to build a better life among the stars. Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth, Ensign Rodriguez reported. Admiral Chen wants to speak with all Prometheus captains before we engage. Put her through. Admiral Chen's image appeared on the main view screen, her expression stern but determined. Behind her, Captain Park could see the Federation's war room bustling with activity. Prometheus Fleet. This is Admiral Chen. In approximately 30 minutes, You will engage the enemy forces threatening Mars Colony Beta. This will be humanity's first military action against a galactic power, and it will set the tone for everything that follows." She paused, her eyes seeming to look directly at each captain through the screen. "The Zephyrians chose to make our pain into entertainment. They murdered our people to study our emotional responses. They treated us like animals in a cage, poking us with sticks to see how we would react. Today they learn what happens when the animals break out of the cage." Captain Park felt a chill run down his spine. Around the bridge, his crew members straightened in their seats, their faces reflecting the same cold determination he felt building in his chest. "Your orders are simple," Admiral Chen continued. "Destroy every Zephyrian military asset in the Mars system. Leave no survivors. Show no mercy. Let the galaxy see what human anger looks like when it's focused, directed, and backed by superior technology." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Captain Park returned to his command chair and activated the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. In 25 minutes, we will drop out of hyperspace directly on top of the Zephyrian fleet. Our mission is the complete elimination of enemy forces and the protection of Mars Colony Beta. This is not a rescue mission. This is a statement." He paused, thinking of the 4,000 humans who had already died for alien entertainment. "For 3 months, we have been the galaxy's comedy show. Today we become their nightmare. All stations prepare for combat." The next 20 minutes passed in focused preparation. Unlike the chaotic scramble that preceded most space battles, the crew of Retribution worked with calm efficiency. Every system was checked and double-checked. Every weapon was charged and ready. Every crew member knew exactly what they needed to do. "Hyperspace exit in 60 seconds, Commander Wright announced. "Weapons armed and ready," confirmed Lieutenant Commander Santos. "Stealth field holding steady," added Chief Engineer Kelly Murphy from her station. "They won't see us coming until we want them to." Captain Park gripped the arms of his command chair. "All stations report ready for combat. 30 seconds to hyperspace exit." On the tactical display, the positions of the other 16 Prometheus vessels appeared as friendly contacts. Each ship was approaching the Zephyrian formation from a different vector, ensuring complete coverage and no possibility of escape. 10 seconds. Captain Park thought about the Galactic Council's mocking laughter. He thought about High Counselor Vexthul's amusement at human anger. He thought about the entertainment broadcasts showing human deaths that had made the Zephyrians rich and famous across dozens of star systems. Hyperspace. "Exit! Now! The universe twisted around!" Retribution as it dropped back into normal space, emerging less than 5,000 kilometers from the nearest Zephyrian cruiser. The alien vessel was massive, its hull covered in energy shields and weapon ports that could have annihilated any previous human starship. "Contact!" Lieutenant Commander Santos shouted. 12 Zephyrian heavy cruisers, exactly as expected. "They're powering up weapons and turning toward us." "Are they transmitting?" "Yes, sir. They're demanding our immediate surrender and—" "Sir, they're laughing. The transmission includes what appears to be celebration noises. They think this is another example of human emotional responses." Captain Park smiled coldly. "Open a channel to the Zephyrian fleet commander." The main screen flickered, then showed the bridge of the alien flagship. The Zephyrian commander was a tall reptilian creature, with scales that shifted color according to its emotional state. Currently, those scales were bright yellow, which their xenological briefings had identified as extreme amusement. "Little human ship," the alien commander hissed through the translation system, "you have arrived just in time to witness the entertainment bombardment of your colony world. Your timing is quite convenient for our recording systems." "Actually," Captain Park replied, his voice deadly calm, "we're here to provide you with different kind of entertainment." The Zephyrian scales flickered with confusion. "Different entertainment? What could your tiny vessel possibly offer that would interest the mighty Zephyrian dominion?" Captain Park looked directly into the alien's multifaceted eyes. "We're here to show you what human anger really looks like when we stop holding back." "Stop holding back?" The Zephyrian commander's scales shifted to a lighter yellow, indicating even greater amusement. "Little human, you are already doing your very best. Your emotional displays have been quite entertaining. But surely you don't believe your primitive technology could threaten our fleet." "Lieutenant Commander Santos," Captain Park said without breaking eye contact with the alien, "show them what we've been working on." "Yes, sir." targeting the flagship with primary particle beam array. The Zephyrian commander's amusement faltered slightly. Particle beam array? Your species hasn't developed such technology. You're right, Captain Park admitted. We haven't developed it. We've perfected it. Lieutenant Commander Santos's finger hovered over the firing control. Target locked, Captain. All systems ready. Captain Park thought about every human who had died for alien entertainment. He thought about the children who would never grow up, the parents who would never see their families again, the dreams that had been snuffed out for the sake of galactic amusement. Fire. The space around Retribution lit up like a newborn star. The ship's primary weapon discharged a coherent beam of exotic particles that no galactic civilization had ever successfully weaponized. The beam struck the Zephyrian flagship's shields and passed through them as if they didn't exist, then continued through the hull, the superstructure, and out the other side. For a moment, nothing happened. The massive alien warship continued floating in space, apparently undamaged. Then it simply ceased to exist. Not exploded, not destroyed, simply gone, as if it had never been there at all. The remaining 11 Zephyrian cruisers hung motionless in space, their crews undoubtedly staring in shock at the empty space where their flagship had been just seconds before. All Prometheus vessels, Captain Park said into his communications array, you are cleared to engage. Let's show the galaxy what happens when you make humans angry. Across 17 different star systems, trillions of alien beings stopped what they were doing to watch their entertainment feeds as the impossible unfolded before their eyes. What had started as another episode of primitive emotion theater was rapidly becoming something far more terrifying. On the bridge of Retribution, Captain Park watched the tactical display as 16 more human vessels materialized around the remaining Zephyrian cruisers. The alien ships, each one a masterpiece of galactic military engineering, suddenly looked fragile and primitive compared to the sleek predators that had surrounded them. Sir, Lieutenant Commander Santos reported, her voice tight with controlled excitement. All Prometheus vessels are in position. The Zephyrians are attempting to flee, but their hyperspace engines won't engage. That's because we're jamming them, Captain Park explained. We want the galaxy to see the entire show. On worlds across dozens of star systems, beings who had spent months laughing at human suffering now watched in stunned silence as the UES Vengeance opened fire on the nearest Zephyrian cruiser. The alien vessel's shields flared brilliantly for exactly 0.3 seconds before the human weapon punched through them and tore the ship apart from the inside. Out High Counselor Vexthal watched from his private chambers on the Galactic Council Station, his compound eyes fixed on the multiple screens showing feeds from different human ships. His mandibles clicked nervously as he witnessed technology that shouldn't have existed being deployed with surgical precision. This is impossible, he chittered to his aide, a smaller insectoid creature whose carapace was trembling with fear. Our intelligence reports indicated that human technology was centuries behind galactic standards. Perhaps our intelligence was incorrect. High Counselor, the aide suggested quietly. On the entertainment networks, excited commentators who had been providing humorous commentary about human emotional responses suddenly found themselves struggling to explain what they were seeing. The UES Wrath demonstrated what human engineers called a gravitational lance by creating a localized black hole that lasted exactly long, enough to consume a Zephyrian heavy cruiser, before safely dissipating. By the eternal flames, whispered Counselor Zephaniah as her crystalline form flickered, with patterns of distress. They're not just destroying the ships, they're making the destruction impossible to understand. She was watching the UES Fury engage 3 Zephyrian cruisers simultaneously, using weapons that appeared to rewrite the fundamental laws of physics in localized areas. One alien ship simply folded in on itself until it became a point of light and vanished. Another began aging rapidly, its hull corroding and crumbling as if millions of years had passed in seconds. The third stopped moving entirely, its crew and systems frozen in time while the ship continued to drift through space like a monument to human ingenuity. Back on Mars Colony Beta, 2 million human civilians watched from their homes and shelters as the space battle unfolded overhead. Unlike the aliens who saw this as entertainment, the humans understood they were witnessing a declaration of war against the entire galactic order. "Mom," asked 8-year-old Tommy Williams, pressing his face against the reinforced window of their family's shelter, "why are the alien ships disappearing?" His mother, Dr. Sarah Williams, pulled him close as another flash of light marked the elimination of another Zephyrian vessel. Because sometimes, honey, when people push other people too far, those other people push back. Are we winning? Dr. Williams watched as the UES Justice demonstrated humanity's mastery of quantum warfare by existing in 17 different locations simultaneously, each quantum copy firing different weapons at different targets before consolidating back into a single vessel. The Zephyrian cruiser it had been targeting simply forgot how to exist and faded away like a bad dream. Yes, Tommy, we're winning. Across the galaxy, the mood on the entertainment networks had shifted from amusement to something approaching panic. Commentators who had spent months mocking human anger were now frantically trying to explain how a primitive species had developed, technology that made the most advanced galactic civilizations look like children, playing with sticks and stones. On the Zephyrian homeworld, Supreme Commander Thylex watched the feeds from the Mars system with growing horror. His reptilian features, normally a calm green, had shifted to the deep purple that indicated extreme fear. "How many of our ships remain?" he asked his aide. "3, Supreme Commander, out of 12. "And how many human vessels have we destroyed?" The aide's silence was answer enough. Supreme Commander Thylex activated his communication system and opened a channel to the human fleet. The image that appeared on his screen was that of Captain Park, sitting calmly in his command chair, as if he weren't in the middle of annihilating the most powerful fleet in Zephyrian space. "Human Commander," Thylex began, his voice carefully controlled despite his terror. "I am Supreme Commander Thylex of the Zephyrian Dominion. I demand an explanation for this unprovoked attack on our forces." Captain Park's expression didn't change. "Unprovoked? You've been murdering our people for 3 months. You turned our pain into entertainment. You made our children's deaths into profit. That was research," Thylex stammered. "Legitimate scientific inquiry into xenopsychology." "No," Captain Park corrected quietly. "That was a mistake. On the tactical display, the remaining 3 Zephyrian cruisers attempted to form a defensive formation, their crews undoubtedly hoping that combined firepower might give them a chance against the human vessels. It was a logical strategy that would have worked against any conventional galactic navy. The UES Nemesis demonstrated why human military doctrine had evolved beyond conventional thinking. Instead of attacking the alien ships directly, it fired a weapon that caused the space around them to become temporarily allergic to Zephyrian technology. The 3 cruisers began dissolving as the universe itself rejected their right to exist. "This is impossible," Supreme Commander Thylex whispered, watching his most powerful fleet simply cease to be. "Your technology, it's beyond anything in galactic civilization." "You're right," Captain Park agreed. "It is. We've had 200 years to prepare for this moment, and we've used that time wisely." The last Zephyrian cruiser was taken by the UES Retribution itself, using what Captain Park later described in his after-action report as aggressive negotiations with the fundamental constants of reality. The alien vessel found itself experiencing physics that operated on entirely different principles, and within seconds had been converted into a brief poem written in quantum mathematics before fading into nothing. Supreme Commander Thylex stared at his blank screens in shock. You eliminated our entire fleet, 12 heavy cruisers, our most advanced warships." "Actually," Captain Park said, checking his tactical display, "we eliminated them in approximately 4 minutes and 37 seconds. We could have done it faster, but we wanted to make sure the galaxy had time to appreciate the performance." "Performance?" Captain Park's smile was colder than the space between stars. "You wanted entertainment, Supreme Commander. You wanted to watch humans react to pressure. Well, now you have it. This performance is being broadcast to 37 star systems, representing over 2 trillion viewers." He paused, allowing the implications to sink in. "They're all watching us right now. They're all seeing what happens when you make humans angry, really truly angry." Supreme Commander Thylex's scales had shifted to a color that had no equivalent in human language but roughly translated to existential terror. What do you want?" he asked quietly. Captain Park leaned forward in his command chair. "We want you to understand something, Supreme Commander. For 3 months, you've been studying human anger as if it were some kind of curiosity, some primitive emotional response that you could poke and prod for your amusement. But what you never understood is that human anger isn't just an emotion. It's a tool. It's fuel. When you made us angry, you didn't just hurt our feelings. You gave us the motivation to become something you never expected. Which is, Captain Park's smile widened, your superiors. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 18 hours after the complete annihilation of the Zephyrian fleet at Mars. Unlike the previous meeting, where alien delegates had laughed at human suffering, the massive chamber was filled with nervous whispers and fearful glances at the central podium, where Ambassador Elena Rodriguez once again stood. But this time, she was not alone. Admiral Sarah Chen stood beside her, wearing the full dress uniform of the United Earth Federation Navy. Behind them, a holographic display showed the tactical footage from the Mars engagement, playing on an endless loop for the assembled delegates to study. Ships that had represented the pinnacle of galactic military technology, simply ceasing to exist, erased by weapons that operated beyond conventional understanding. High Counselor Vexthul's compound eyes darted nervously between the human representatives and the holographic display. His mandibles clicked in what Elena had learned to recognize as extreme anxiety. The chamber that had once echoed with alien laughter was now silent except for the whispered conversations of terrified civilizations trying to understand what they had witnessed. Honored delegates, Elena began, her voice carrying easily across the vast space. 3 days ago I stood in this chamber and warned you that humans get even. Today I'm here to discuss terms. Terms? Counselor Zephaniah's crystalline form flickered with patterns of distress. What terms could your species possibly offer? You have committed an act of war against a member of the Galactic Council. Admiral Chen stepped forward, her weathered face showing no emotion. Counselor Zephaniah, with respect, the Zephyrian Dominion committed acts of war against humanity for 3 months. They murdered 4,000 of our civilians for entertainment purposes. Yesterday, we simply responded in kind. You call the complete destruction of a fleet responding in kind? Demanded Counselor Morpheus, his gaseous form swirling agitatedly within his containment suit. No. Admiral Chen replied calmly. I call it a demonstration. The word hung in the air like a physical presence. Around the chamber, delegates began to understand that what they had witnessed at Mars was not humanity's desperate last stand, but a carefully orchestrated display of power. A demonstration of what? High Counselor Vexthul asked, though his tone suggested he already feared the answer. Elena activated the holographic controls, replacing the battle footage with a star map of the local galactic region. Red dots appeared throughout the display, marking positions that made several delegates gasp in recognition. A demonstration of what we're capable of when properly motivated, Elena explained. These red markers indicate the current positions of the remainder of our Prometheus fleet. 73 ships, stationed near strategic targets throughout Zephyrian space. Supreme Commander Thylex's image appeared on a communication screen, his reptilian features showing the deep purple of abject terror. Human Admiral, surely you're not suggesting— I'm not suggesting anything, Supreme Commander, Admiral Chen interrupted. I'm informing you. At this moment, every major Zephyrian military installation, shipyard, and command center is within range of our weapons. We are prepared to demonstrate our capabilities on a much larger scale if necessary. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien voices as delegates realized the implications. The humans hadn't just won a single battle. They had positioned themselves to cripple the most powerful military force in the galaxy. This is madness, High Counselor Vexthul chittered. You cannot simply threaten an entire civilization. Can't we? Elena asked mildly. 3 days ago you found our anger amusing. You laughed at our pain. You turned our deaths into entertainment. Now you're surprised that we're angry enough to do something about it? Dr. Kethavar, a delegate from the peaceful Altarian Republic, spoke from his pod with a voice like singing crystals. Ambassador Rodriguez, surely your species understands that escalating this conflict will only lead to greater bloodshed. The Galactic Council has mediation protocols. Dr. Kethavar, Elena interrupted. Where were these mediation protocols when the Zephyrians were murdering our people? Where was the Galactic Council's concern for bloodshed when they were broadcasting our deaths for entertainment? That was different, protested Counselor Zephaniah. The Zephyrians were conducting legitimate research. The Zephyrians were committing genocide for profit, Admiral Chen corrected sharply. And every species in this chamber that purchased Access to those broadcasts was complicit in that genocide. The uncomfortable silence fell over the assembly as delegates realized that their entertainment consumption had funded the murder of human civilians. Elena manipulated the display again, showing detailed schematics of human technology that made even the most advanced species in the galaxy look primitive by comparison. For 2 centuries, while you've been comfortable in your assumption of technological superiority, we've been preparing. We've been studying every piece of alien technology we could find, reverse engineering it, improving it, and combining it in ways none of you ever imagined. The weapons you witnessed at Mars represent approximately 15% of our current capabilities, Admiral Chen added. We have devices that can rewrite the fundamental laws of physics in localized areas. We have ships that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. We have weapons that can cause stars to age rapidly or planets to simply forget they exist. Counselor Morpheus's gaseous form was swirling in obvious agitation. If your technology is so advanced, why reveal it now? Why not remain hidden and continue developing in secret? Elena's expression hardened. Because you made us angry. And when humans get angry enough, we stop hiding and start demonstrating exactly why our anger should be feared rather than mocked. Supreme Commander Thylex's image flickered on the communication screen. What do you want from us? Admiral Chen consulted a tablet, reading from what was obviously a prepared list. First, the immediate cessation of all hostile actions against human targets. Second, the withdrawal of all Zephyrian forces from human space. Third, reparations in the amount of 50 billion galactic credits for the families of those murdered during your research. 50 billion credits, Thylex gasped. That's the entire military budget of the Dominion for 10 years. Then you should have considered the cost before you decided to murder our people for entertainment, Elena replied coldly. High Counselor Vexthol leaned forward in his pod. And if the Zephyrian Dominion refuses these terms? Admiral Chen's smile was like a blade. Then we move to Phase 2 of our demonstration. Would you like to see what happens when we're really angry? The holographic display shifted to show a new set of schematics that made the Prometheus-class ships look like children's toys. The assembled delegates stared in horror at weapons that seemed to operate on principles that shouldn't have been possible. These are our Apocalypse-class vessels, Admiral Chen explained conversationally. We have 12 of them positioned at strategic points throughout the galaxy. Each one is capable of sterilizing entire solar systems in a matter of minutes. You're bluffing, Counselor Zephaniah stated, though her crystalline form was flickering with uncertainty. Are we? Elena asked. She activated another control, and the display showed real-time footage from the edge of Zephyrian space, where a massive human vessel was powering up. Weapons that made space itself ripple with distortion. Effects. The UES Armageddon is currently targeting the uninhabited Kethalon system, Admiral Chen announced. In approximately 30 seconds, we will demonstrate what happens to solar systems that annoy us. The chamber held its collective breath as they watched the human ship charge its weapons. Energy readings that violated several known laws of physics began climbing toward impossible levels. 10 seconds, Admiral Chen announced calmly. Wait, Supreme Commander Thylex shouted from his communication screen. We accept your terms. All of them. Please don't fire, Admiral Chen commanded. The Kethalon system, which had contained a star and 6 planets, simply wasn't there anymore. Not destroyed, not exploded, simply absent as if it had never existed. Space folded in on itself, then smoothed out, leaving only empty void where an entire solar system had been, moments before. The Galactic Council chamber was so quiet that the sound of Elena Rodriguez's breathing was audible. Across the vast space, that, she said quietly, is what human anger looks like when we stop holding back. She looked around the chamber at the terrified faces of beings who had spent months laughing at human suffering. Now, shall we discuss how the galaxy is going to change? 6 months after the destruction of the Kethalon system, the galaxy had become a very different place. The entertainment networks that had once broadcast human suffering for profit now ran nothing but educational programming about diplomatic protocols and peaceful coexistence. The Zephyrian Dominion had been reduced to a shadow of its former self, its military disbanded, and its leadership facing war crimes tribunals on 17 different worlds. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez walked through the corridors of the new Galactic arbitration station. a massive structure that humanity had built in the neutral zone between major galactic powers. Unlike the ostentatious displays of the old Galactic Council chambers, this facility was designed for function rather than intimidation. The hallways were clean, efficient, and filled with beings from across the galaxy who had come to petition the new arbitrators for justice. Because that's what humans had become, the galaxy's arbitrators, whether they wanted the job or not. Elena entered the main conference room where Admiral Chen was meeting with representatives from the Altarian Republic. The peaceful crystalline beings had been among the first to formally request human protection after witnessing what had happened to those who had opposed them. Ambassador Rodriguez, Dr. Kethvar chimed as she entered, his crystalline form pulsing with respectful patterns. We were just discussing the trade dispute between our colonies and the Thraxian Empire. Elena took her seat at the conference table, noting how the alien delegates instinctively positioned themselves to show deference to human authority. It was a far cry from the mocking laughter that had greeted her 6 months ago. "What's the situation?" she asked. Admiral Chen consulted her tablet. "The Thraxians have been demanding tribute payments from Altarian merchant vessels passing through their space. When the Altarians refused, the Thraxians began seizing cargo ships. Piracy, in other words," Elena observed. "The Thraxians claim it's a legitimate toll for system protection," Dr. Kethvar explained nervously. "They say that since the dissolution of the old Galactic Council, they have the right to control their territorial space." Elena nodded thoughtfully. Since humanity had effectively dismantled the old galactic order, dozens of smaller powers had attempted to fill the vacuum left behind. Most of them had learned quickly that humans took a dim view of aggressive expansion, but some still needed convincing. "Admiral, what's our current naval presence in that sector?" 3 Prometheus-class vessels conducting routine patrols, Admiral Chen replied. "The UES Diplomacy, the UES Negotiation, and the UES Final Argument." Elena almost smiled at the names. Human ship designers had developed a sense of humor about their role as galactic peacekeepers. Ships named after diplomatic concepts but carrying enough firepower to reshape solar systems had a certain ironic appeal. "Dr. Kethvar, has the Altarian Republic formally requested human intervention in this matter?" "Yes, Ambassador. We submit our petition under Article 7 of the Human Protection Protocols." Elena pulled up the relevant documents on her tablet. The Human Protection Protocols had been established after dozens of species had realized that aligning themselves with humanity offered better security than any military alliance in galactic history. In exchange for formal recognition of human authority in interspecies disputes, member worlds received protection from a species that had proven capable of erasing entire civilizations from existence. "Very well. Admiral Chen, please dispatch a message to the Thraxian Empire. Inform them that their actions against Altarian vessels constitute piracy under galactic law, and that they have 72 hours to cease these activities and release any captured vessels." "And if they refuse?" Elena's expression hardened slightly. "Then we remind them what happened to the last group that thought they could prey on peaceful species under human protection." Admiral Chen nodded and began composing the message. As she worked, Elena reflected on how dramatically their situation had changed. 6 months ago, humans had been considered a curiosity, an emotional, primitive species suitable only for entertainment. Now they were the ultimate authority in galactic affairs, and their word was law across hundreds of star systems. The irony wasn't lost on her that this power had come from the very trait the aliens had mocked: human anger. When properly focused and backed by superior technology, that anger had proven to be the most effective diplomatic tool in galactic history. "Ambassador," Dr. Kethvar said quietly, "if I may ask, why do you help us? Your species could easily have used your power to conquer the galaxy rather than protect it." Elena considered the question carefully. It was one she'd been asked many times in recent months, always by species that couldn't understand why humans didn't simply take what they wanted by force. "Dr. Kethvar, when we discovered we weren't alone in the universe, we were excited to meet other intelligent species. We wanted to learn from you, trade with you, explore the galaxy together as equals." She gestured toward the tablet displaying footage from the Mars engagement. What we found instead was a galactic community that treated us like animals in a zoo. They laughed at our pain, profited from our deaths, and considered our suffering to be entertainment. That anger you've heard so much about? It didn't come from being weak. It came from being disappointed. We expected better from civilizations that had thousands of years to mature beyond such cruelty. Dr. Kethvar's crystalline form flickered with understanding. So you became the civilization you had hoped to find. Exactly. Someone has to be responsible for ensuring that species like yours don't suffer the way we did. Someone has to make sure that might doesn't automatically make right, and that peaceful beings aren't preyed upon by those with superior firepower. Admiral Chen looked up from her tablet. Message sent to the Thraxian Empire. I also took the liberty of positioning the UES final argument directly over their capital world, just in case they need a visual reminder of the consequences of poor decision-making. Good thinking. What other business do we have today? The Corvin Syndicate has requested permission to establish mining operations in the Outer Rim. The Deltan Federation wants to discuss joining the protection protocols. And we've received another formal apology from the remnants of the Zephyrian government, along with this month's reparation payment. Elena nodded as she reviewed each request. The Corvin mining operation would need environmental impact studies. The Deltan Federation had a clean record and would likely be approved for protection status. The Zephyrian reparations were ahead of schedule, which suggested their new leadership was highly motivated to avoid any further demonstrations of human displeasure. There's one more thing, Admiral Chen added. We've received a request from Earth Command. They want to know if we're ready to proceed with Phase 3 of the integration protocol. Elena paused, her stylus hovering over her tablet. Phase 3 represented the final step in humanity's assumption of galactic leadership, the establishment of permanent human governance over all interspecies affairs. It would formalize what had already become reality. Humans were now the dominant power in the galaxy, and their decisions were final. Are we ready? She asked. Admiral Chen considered the question seriously. Our military position is unassailable. We have the technology, the infrastructure, and the respect necessary to maintain order. The question is whether we want the responsibility. Dr. Kethvar, Elena said, turning to the Altarian representative, speaking for your people, would you support formal human governance of galactic affairs? The crystalline being's form pulsed with what Elena had learned to recognize as earnest consideration. Ambassador, before humanity revealed itself, our species lived in constant fear. Fear of the Zephyrians, fear of the Thraxians, fear of any number of aggressive powers that saw peaceful beings as easy targets. Now, for the first time in our history, we sleep peacefully knowing that someone powerful enough to protect us actually cares about our welfare. If that requires formal recognition of human authority, then yes, the Altarian Republic would support such a measure. Elena nodded thoughtfully. Around the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place as species that had once viewed humans as primitive entertainment came to terms with their new reality. The beings who had laughed at human anger now lived under human protection, and most of them were grateful for it. Admiral, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we're ready to proceed with Phase 3. As Admiral Chen began composing the message, Elena looked out the viewport at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, the UES final argument was probably having a very polite conversation with Thraxian officials about the importance of respecting their neighbors' shipping rights. Somewhere else, human patrol ships were ensuring that peaceful species could go about their business without fear of aggression. It wasn't the galaxy that humanity had hoped to find when they first reached for the stars, but it was the galaxy they had chosen to create, forged from the anger that others had mocked and the determination that others had underestimated, and if any species in the future decided to test human resolve, well, the galaxy had seen what happened to those who made that mistake. Elena turned back to her work, reviewing the next day's schedule of diplomatic meetings, trade negotiations, and peaceful dispute resolutions. It was quiet, methodical work that would have bored the aliens who had once found human anger so entertaining. But Elena knew that behind this peaceful facade lay the promise of absolute destruction for anyone who threatened the new order. Human anger still burned just as hot as it always had. The difference was that now, the galaxy knew better than to laugh at it. 2 years after the establishment of the Human Galactic Authority, Elena Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of the UES Harmony, humanity's newest and largest diplomatic vessel. The ship orbited the former Zephyrian homeworld, now renamed Haven in recognition of its transformation from a center of galactic oppression to a refuge for species, recovering from centuries of exploitation. The planet below showed the remarkable changes that had occurred under human administration. Cities that had once served as command centers for military operations had been converted into medical facilities, educational institutions, and cultural centers. The Zephyrian population, reduced and humbled by the consequences of their actions, worked alongside refugee populations from dozens of worlds to build something entirely new. "It's hard to believe this is the same world that ordered the attack on our colonies," said Captain Maria Santos, Elena's aide and the sister of the tactical officer who had served aboard the Retribution during the Mars engagement. She had requested assignment to the diplomatic corps as a way of honoring her sister's sacrifice. "People can change," Elena replied, watching a group of young Zephyrians playing with refugee children from 6 different species in a park that had once been a military parade ground. "When they understand the consequences of their choices, even the most aggressive species can learn to coexist peacefully." The transformation of the Zephyrian Dominion served as an example to the entire galaxy of what human justice looked like. Rather than simply destroying their former enemies, humans had chosen rehabilitation over revenge. The Zephyrian military had been disbanded, their weapons destroyed, and their leaders tried for war crimes. But the ordinary citizens had been given the opportunity to build a better society under human guidance. "Ambassador," Captain Santos said, checking her communication tablet, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Integration Council. They're ready for your address." Elena nodded and made her way to the ship's main conference room, where a holographic communication array connected her to representatives from over 300 different worlds. The faces looking back at her represented the most diverse assembly of intelligent life in galactic history. Species that had once been enemies, rivals, or simply strangers now united under human protection and guidance. "Fellow beings," Elena began, her words being simultaneously translated into hundreds of different languages. 2 years ago, humanity was introduced to the galactic community as a source of entertainment. We were mocked for our emotions, laughed at for our anger, and treated as primitive creatures whose suffering could be bought and sold for profit. She paused, allowing the translation systems to catch up. Around the galaxy, beings who had once participated in that mockery now listened with respectful attention. "Today, we gather to celebrate something unprecedented in galactic history. 2 full years without a single interspecies war. 2 years without genocide, without ethnic cleansing, without the strong preying upon the weak for entertainment or profit." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across hundreds of worlds, beings who had lived their entire lives in fear of more powerful neighbors celebrated the peace that human protection had brought them. "This peace didn't come because we eliminated conflict from the galaxy," Elena continued. "It came because we eliminated the profit motive for conflict. We made it clear that aggression against peaceful species would be met with overwhelming force, while cooperation and mutual respect would be rewarded with protection and prosperity." High Counselor Vexthol, the former leader of the old Galactic Council, appeared on one of the communication screens. His compound eyes no longer held the arrogance and amusement they had shown during Elena's first appearance before the Council. Instead, they reflected something that looked very much like gratitude. "Ambassador Rodriguez," he said, his mandibles clicking in the formal speech pattern that Elena had learned indicated deep respect. "On behalf of the Reformed Insectoid Coalition, I wish to express our appreciation for the mercy you have shown our species. We understand that we do not deserve the opportunities you have given us to atone for our past actions." "High Counselor," Elena replied formally, "every species deserves the chance to grow beyond their worst impulses. The question is whether they choose to take that chance." Dr. Kethver appeared on another screen, his crystalline form pulsing with patterns of joy. "The Altarian Republic wishes to announce that our integration with the human educational system has produced our first graduating class of interspecies diplomats. 50 young Altarians are now qualified to serve as mediators in conflicts between different civilizations. Excellent news, Dr. Kethvar. Education and understanding are the foundation of lasting peace. One by one, representatives from worlds across the galaxy reported on their progress in building the new galactic order. Former enemies were working together on joint scientific projects. Species that had never encountered each other were establishing trade relationships under human mediation. The entertainment networks that had once broadcast human suffering now featured educational programming about different cultures and peaceful conflict resolution. There is one final matter to address, Elena said as the reports concluded. The question of humanity's permanent role in galactic affairs. The communication channels fell silent as hundreds of different species waited to hear what their protectors had decided about the future. For 2 years, we have served as the galaxy's guardians by necessity. We took on this role because someone needed to ensure that peaceful beings could live without fear of exploitation or destruction. But governance by force, even benevolent force, is not the ideal foundation for a just society. Elena activated a holographic display showing the proposed structure of a new galactic government. Therefore, the Human Galactic Authority is pleased to announce the creation of the Democratic Galactic Federation. This new government will be based on the principles of consent of the governed, equal representation for all member species, and the protection of individual rights regardless of a being's homeworld or species of origin. The implications of her announcement rippled across the galaxy as beings realized what she was saying. Humanity was voluntarily giving up its absolute power in favor of a democratic system. Humans will continue to serve as the galaxy's military protectors, Elena continued, but civilian governance will be transferred to elected representatives from all member worlds. Every species will have a voice in determining their collective future. High Counselor Vexthul leaned forward, his compound eyes reflecting confusion. Ambassador, forgive my question, but why? Your species has the power to rule absolutely. Why choose to share that power? Elena smiled, remembering a similar conversation she'd had with Dr. Kethvar months earlier. Because High Counselor, absolute power was never our goal. Justice was our goal. Peace was our goal. The opportunity for all intelligent life to flourish was our goal. We could rule through fear forever, maintaining order through the threat of destruction. But that's not the galaxy we want to build. We want to build a galaxy where beings are free not because they fear us, but because they choose to be part of something better. Dr. Kethvar's crystalline form pulsed with understanding. You're giving us the chance to prove that we can govern ourselves responsibly. Exactly. With the understanding that if we're wrong, if some species chooses to return to the old ways of conquest and exploitation, then humanity will resume its role as enforcer. But we believe that given the choice between freedom and tyranny, most beings will choose freedom. The communication channels erupted in discussions as representatives debated the implications of this unexpected development. Some species were nervous about losing human protection. Others were excited about the possibility of self-governance. All of them understood that they were witnessing a historic moment in galactic civilization. Elena looked out at the stars visible through the conference room's viewport, thinking about the journey that had brought them to this point. It had begun with aliens mocking human anger, treating their suffering as entertainment. It had led to the complete restructuring of galactic civilization based on principles of justice and mutual respect. The transition to democratic governance will take place over the next year, she announced. Human military forces will remain in position to ensure stability during this period, and we will continue to serve as protectors of the peace indefinitely. But the future of galactic civilization will be decided by all of us, working together as equals. As the communication session ended, and representatives signed off to begin the complex process of establishing democratic institutions across hundreds of worlds, Elena remained on the observation deck, watching the sunset paint the sky of Haven in brilliant colors.